This is me. I am back. I am Lisa Tonsil. This is the Jilted Recovery Hour, where all things life, encouragement, empowerment, moving forward in life, living and not just existing. Today I'm coming back to you about grief recovery, but from a different aspect, from the aspect of divorce. You know, a lot of times we forget grieving don't only come from the death of a loved one. It comes from divorce. It comes from sometimes divorce of a relationship, not just a marriage. It could be the loss of a friendship. So grieving comes in so many different forms. And sometimes we just need a little help navigating through it. So I am here to help you navigate through it. First of all, don't try to be the strong one. Always give yourself permission to grieve. Always do that. Doesn't mean you got to stay stuck in it, but give yourself permission. You didn't just lose a partner or a friend. You lost a dream. You lost a confidant. Healing can't be rushed because no matter how you think you're rushing it, it'll revisit you if you don't deal with it properly. Allow yourself to cry, reflect, but be determined to release it. So I'm just going to go over a few questions that was presented to me. One of the questions was, how do I stop blaming myself for the failure of my marriage? And the truth is, even if you were the 100% cause of your marriage failing, at some point you have to forgive yourself and allow God to heal you. See, I always tell people the enemy attacked us in these main ways. Not only do he come to steal, kill, and destroy, but he does it through guilt, shame, and blame also. So a lot of times we've made mistakes in life, and it's harder for us to forgive ourselves. We can forgive someone else quicker, but we have to learn to give ourselves grace. As long as we've gotten it right with God the Father and asked him for forgiveness and asked him for restoration. But whatever you do, be intentional about forgiving yourself, even if you were 100% to blame. Now, a lot of times people deal with this even if they had nothing to do with the failure of the marriage. A lot of times people go through divorce, and especially women, they like to tell themselves they're not good enough. Maybe they should have lost weight. Maybe I should have dressed like the next person. Maybe I should have did this or that. You can't blame yourself because it takes two people. Well, actually it takes three. God first. And then it takes each individual trying to do better, trying to heal the situation and move forward. So you cannot control another individual and make them do anything. You can pray for them, believe in faith, but ultimately if they decide they don't want to change, you have to get up and not blame yourself and ask God to help you heal. So somebody also asked, what if they still love their ex? That's okay to still love them, but you want to ask God to help you heal from that type of love from that person and still love them as a human being. Letting go of that type of love is never instant. Even if the relationship is painful, it's never instant. You know, when I back years ago, many years ago, when I was getting my master's degree, my internship was at a domestic violence shelter, and so many people were leaving their homes and they had to leave in emergency situations. And as I'm going through the interview questions and interviewing them, they were blaming themselves, saying, you know, I just couldn't take it anymore. Maybe if I'd have tried harder and things like that, but I still love the person, but I feared for my life. So that lets you know right there, the love doesn't go away instantly. Even if it was a tragic relationship, it takes time, and that's okay. Okay, another question was, how do I trust again when I feel so betrayed? This question was asked of me many years ago. Not because I've never gone through a divorce, so I can't say I know how you feel about a divorce, but I also do know how you feel. Because many years ago, before losing a spouse, my spouse and I counseled couples, and we realized then that divorce have some of the same emotions as if you've lost a, spouse. It have some of the same emotions because it's still the death of something. The person is not dead physically, but it's still the death of a relationship, death of a commitment, death of a covenant. And so someone in my family asked me, because they were going through a divorce, and they told me, I'll never trust a man again. Do you trust a man? And my answer was, what if they, and she asked, what if they betray you? I said, well, I trust myself. I said, and I believe so much in God that I trust myself that I'm not going to go around not trusting anyone because of possible betrayal. I trust myself enough to know that I can pray to God the Father, and if it's something like that that I have to deal with, He'll give me the strength to get through it. But I don't want to live in a state of bitterness because I'm not going to be any good for anybody else. I wouldn't be any good to help anybody else. So that was my answer to her, because I didn't want the past to paralyze her future. You know, she had been betrayed, she was hurt, and everything she was feeling was normal. But I began to give her steps to healing and tell her you can't hide in a shell and never embrace, open up to love again. You just have to make sure you've done the work so that you will not overlook the signs. You have to, and that's not to say every sign is so in your face. But a lot of times, especially when you're of a certain age, the signs are right there in your face. So I was explaining to her, as long as you do the work on yourself, then maybe you could allow yourself to make a better decision in the future. And even if you made a good decision, sometimes you can't control what people are going to do. So don't live in a state of, I was betrayed before, so I'm never going to trust again. But trust yourself enough to put in the work so that you'll have the discernment to know the difference. One more question was, how do I co-parent with somebody I can't even talk to? Now that will take prayer. And I tell people all the time, ultimately, if you and that individual love your child, you're going to realize it's not about either one of you. It's about what's best for the child. And peace is always what's best for the child. Emotions and communications are raw in the beginning. But if you really put your eyes on the focus, which is the children, then you do everything in your power so that their outcome can be a good one. Because if not, the child goes through so many emotional pains that they don't have to go through. But if they see their parents co-parenting the right way, even if they're not together, most of the times these turn out to be good outcomes, good healthy ones at that. So let go of the things you need to let go of. Detach from the title. When you've gone through a divorce, detach from the title. Reclaim your own identity. I don't just mean by dropping the last name, the married last name. Now, of course, me, if that was me, I absolutely would drop it. But it's not me. You're no longer a wife or a husband, but you're still you. Remember that. Reconnect with you. Reconnect with yourself before the relationship existed. Find yourself and ask God, what is the purpose for you in this season? You don't have to rewrite the past, but everything we go through, whether it's our fault or not, we can learn from it. And I don't know about you, I always tell God, let me learn this lesson so that I won't have to repeat it. You don't have to be villainized or have to villainize your ex. Just reflect honestly. What did this teach you about yourself? What are your needs moving forward? What are your boundaries moving forward? Another thing I find when talking on this subject is people love to say they need closure. So they're still grieving because they're expecting that person to give them closure. Closure is so overrated. Your closure is letting go. In this life, we're not going to get answers for everything. And when it comes to divorce, a lot of times when people are at fault, they still want to throw blame on the injured spouse. So don't look for closure in man. Look for closure with God. Sometimes the why will never come. But don't let any unanswered questions hold you hostage. Your peace is of utmost importance, and you have the permission to move on without the closure you're expecting. Rebuild. Don't try and replace anybody. Rebuild yourself. Healing is not about finding someone new, but it's about becoming someone whole. It's about you as a person becoming whole. You're not trying to fill a space. You're building a new foundation. You have a new purpose. Allow God to give you new chapters. Allow Him to give you your next. And when I say next, hear me good. I don't mean next spouse, but allow Him to give you your next assignment. Allow Him to give you whatever your purpose is during that season, but allow God to be God. And then don't isolate. Make sure you're around community. not in isolation. Because most of the time you won't heal in isolation. Healing doesn't come in silence necessarily, not all the time, unless you're silent with God. But God put people and community in our path so that we can help one another. Find out who your tribe is. Now, everybody isn't your tribe during this time. Some people are just there to be nosy or to gossip. But find that right support system, your friend, your support group, church, and even sometimes therapy. Be around people who won't judge you but uplift you. But also be around people that won't enable you so that you won't stay stuck in your grief. So let me go back to another question now. Will anyone want me now that I'm divorced? Oh, wow, that is such a good question. And the answer is yes. But I will say, if you're going through a new divorce or you're still in your healing stage, don't worry about if anyone will want you or even look to have someone. Be concerned with healing. Be concerned with casting all your cares upon God because He cares for you. He's there there to heal the brokenhearted. Sometimes this brings about a deep fear of rejection. But remember this. Man may reject you, but God will never reject you. He said, I'll never leave you nor forsake you, but I'll be with you until the end of time. And sometimes we forget that. When we're hurting and we're in pain, we forget that God is the only one that promised to be with us forever. So to answer your question, will anyone want me now that I'm divorced? God always wants you. Be concerned with your healing. Don't worry about what's next or if anyone will want you. But also, if that spouse have told you that just to manipulate you, nobody wants you, you don't have this going for yourself, you look that enemy right in the face. I'm not talking about going back to the spouse. If you have to look in the mirror and tell that enemy you are a liar. God created me, and when He created me, He didn't create a mess. He didn't create any junk. So I am more than enough. Okay? One of the other questions was, how do I forgive them and forgive myself? Here's what I think about forgiveness. It is the right thing to do, and it's right especially for you. But forgiveness is a process. But just because it's a process, don't use it as an excuse to take years to forgive someone. See, I like to practice instant faith. So when things happen to me, I instantly say, I forgive them. Even if I don't truly believe it yet. It's not a game. It's not cliche-ish. But it's about me trying to start the first steps so that when I keep presenting it to God, asking Him to help me heal and to forgive, that it'll begin to line up with my spirit. So initially I do it by faith. I say it by faith. And I'm seeking God to help me with the feelings of it. So forgiveness feels like letting them off the hook, and that's not what it means. Until you learn that it's really for you and not them, then you're going to be stuck. So forgiveness is always the answer so that you can move forward in life. One of the other questions was, what if I'm scared to be alone for the rest of my life? You know, I know a few people like that. They always want to be with someone else, not necessarily a significant other or a spouse, but even if it's just living with someone because they never lived alone and they have a fear of living alone. That means we're trusting man more than we're trusting God. You know, when my spouse passed away many years ago, one of my sisters asked me the question. She said, you're not afraid to be in this house by yourself? And I told her, not afraid enough to have to always be dependent and live with someone else. Because what does that say about me as a child of God? So no, I wasn't afraid of being lonely. I wasn't afraid of the fear of living alone. I wanted God to get the glory out of my situation. And not only that, I was a fully grown adult. I didn't want to live my life having to live with someone. I wanted to trust God to the fullest. So remember this, your loneliness sometimes feels louder than your healing if it's not addressed head on. So some things you have to address head on and be honest with yourself and say, I am alone. I am afraid to be alone. I'm afraid to feel loneliness. I'm afraid to live in this house alone. Speak that. Speak that, because that's saying, okay, I'm acknowledging what my fear is, but my faith has to be bigger than my fear. Now I'm talking to the believers, and hopefully this will help someone that may not be a believer, but I can only speak with you of what my life is. And you have to face some things head on. But facing them and speaking them out loud That's the first step. Now we know you're afraid, but do something about it. And so what I did when I was faced with that and I had to be alone, hey, I just made sure I had an alarm system. I had my Bible and I had my personal home protection. So, first of all, I wasn't going to live in fear because of God. Secondly, I was going to take the measures to make myself feel comfortable. But I was not going to stagnate myself and opt to live with someone else for the rest of my life, because that's not true living either. So this next question say, how do I stop comparing myself to my ex new life? You know, one time when I was counseling this particular young lady who had gone through a divorce and she was getting ready to get remarried. And as we were counseling, doing premarital counseling with the couple, we had the hard job of telling her, you're not ready to be remarried because you haven't let go of the past. Because she was grieving the fact that her ex had moved on and seemingly living this good life, and she was still stuck with these emotions. So I had the hard job of telling her, you're not ready to move on. Because if you haven't forgiven him, and her feelings were natural, her feelings were normal, but you have to get past those feelings. You have to do whatever it takes to heal, or else you're going to always covet the new life that your ex may have with or without you. And sometimes social media, mutual connections, sometimes they trigger deep insecurities or jealousy. So sometimes you have to shut down the noise and focus just on God, just you and God. Allow God and tell him what you're feeling, but allow him to heal it. Give it to him, but allow him to heal it. Anytime you feel those feelings rise up, talk to yourself. I do that in a lot of instances. If it's a situation I said I'm not going to go back into, whether it's, let me just use this as an example, whether it's lending people money or whatever it is. Sometimes I have to talk to myself because of my heart and say, nope, you're not going to do this. So if you have to talk to yourself and say, I'm not going to be jealous of their new life because God have new life for me. And then allow God to take it from you, but give it to him. Don't keep taking it back. Can God still use me after divorce? He absolutely can. Regardless of why you're divorced, if you have committed your life to God, you've repented if it was your fault, you've asked God for forgiveness, or you've gotten to the point of forgiving yourself, yes, ma'am, God can use any one of us. If you look all through that Bible, God never used perfect people. More so than not, the people in the Bible that God used mightily were characters. Peter was cutting people's ear off. You know, it's just a host of examples in the Bible that we can see that God didn't use perfect people. He would have no use for perfect people, because how would we be a testimony to anyone else? And this is especially true for people of faith. Divorce can feel like spiritual failure or disqualification. I remember talking to an individual, and they didn't want a divorce, but their spouse did. And they said they were ashamed because their whole family, all they knew was marriages that had longevity. They'd been married a long time. Nobody in their family was divorced. They were going to be the first one divorced. So they felt ashamed of it. And once they finally forgiven themselves, they realized, hey, God can use this. He can use this for me to help others to make sure you consult God. Because this individual didn't consult God. They just got married. All the signs were there. So, yeah, God can definitely use you, because he used this individual to tell people, don't overlook the signs. Don't overlook it just because you want to be married. Don't overlook it just because the person looked good, looked nice, or fit your status, social status in life. You can't overlook things because they'll come back to bite you. But absolutely, God can still use you as long as you submit to him and do it his way. Now, for the last question I got in for today is, where do I even start rebuilding my life? First of all, rebuild with God. Allow God to rebuild your life. Remember, if any man be in Christ, he's a new creature. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. Now, most of the time that verse is referring to how we were before Christ and then how we are after Christ, how God comes to transform us. But God can transform us from any part of life. He can give us restoration, healing, and rebuilding. The overwhelming part of starting over sometimes feel paralyzing until a roadmap is given. But God have already given us a roadmap. It's called the Holy Bible. It's called His Scriptures. So allow God through His Word to rebuild you. You can start over. You can heal, and you can move forward in life and allow God to live through you. Allow God to glorify Himself through you. Anything we go through in life, whether good or bad, there's lessons to be learned, and then God will use that for you to help someone else who feel like they may be stuck. So remember, let go and let God. That sounds cliche-ish, but it's the right thing to do. Create a life that feels like it's you. Create a life for the new you. Allow God to guide your steps. He said if we acknowledge Him in all our ways, He will direct our path. Protect your heart, but don't harden it. You're going to need boundaries, but don't turn your walls into prisons or bondage. Healing means your heart can be wiser and open at the same time. It can happen and they can coexist. Remember, co-parent with peace, not pettiness. Think about the goal, the kids. But whatever you do, last but not least, speak life over your future. Death and life is in the power of the tongue. Speak life over your future. Continue to give it to God. Continue to ask God for guidance and direction. And He's right there waiting. He's right there with open arms. He said, I've been waiting on you all day to surrender to me. No more saying that you failed. Say, I'm healing, I'm growing, and I'm becoming. You're not starting over. You're starting stronger. With God, all things are possible. You just have to believe it, and you have to take the steps to get through it. So until the next time, be blessed, live, and don't just exist.